Have you ever wondered about the journey of Sara Duterte, the Vice President of the Philippines? A journey that began with a wave of optimism and an array of promises. The early days of her vice presidency were marked by a sense of hope, a belief in a brighter future for the Philippines. Born into a family with deep political roots, Sara Duterte was no stranger to the world of politics. Her father, Rodrigo Duterte, served as the president of the Philippines, a post that undoubtedly influenced Sara's political ambitions. This lineage set the stage for her ascent to the vice presidency, a position she assumed with great enthusiasm and a commitment to serve the Filipino people. Her initial promises were bold and ambitious, painting a picture of a Philippines that was progressive, inclusive, and forward-looking. She pledged to fight corruption, to stand for the rights of the less privileged, and to foster economic growth. There was a collective sigh of relief, a sense of anticipation that perhaps, just perhaps, things were about to change for the better. In these early days, there was an air of optimism that surrounded her. The Filipino people, weary of years of political instability and corruption, looked to her as a beacon of hope. The media was abuzz with stories of her potential, her ability to bring about real change. She was, after all, the daughter of a president known for his strongman politics, and many believed that she would follow in his footsteps, but with a progressive and inclusive twist. Yet beneath this veneer of optimism, there were whispers of uncertainty. Questions were raised about her ability to deliver on her promises, about the influence of her father's controversial presidency on her own political career. But these were early days, and there was still hope that she would rise above these concerns and prove her critics wrong. But as time went on, things started to change. Let's delve deeper into the challenges and controversies that marked her tenure. As Sara Duterte's vice presidency was marked by a series of unfulfilled promises. A leader's credibility is often measured by their ability to follow through on their word, and unfortunately, Duterte's tenure falls short in this regard. One of her key promises was poverty reduction. She pledged to lift millions out of poverty, a commendable goal indeed. But as time passed, the number of poverty-stricken individuals remained largely unchanged. The promise of a better life, a life free from the shackles of poverty, was left unfulfilled. Next, let's talk about infrastructure development. Duterte promised an infrastructure boom, a golden age of sorts. She envisioned shimmering skyscrapers, expansive highways, and state-of-the-art public facilities. Yet, as her term progressed, these visions remained largely on paper. The promised infrastructure boom turned out to be more of a whimper, leaving the nation's growth potential untapped. Then there was the promise of anti-corruption measures. Duterte assured the public that she would lead a clean government, free from the stains of corruption. However, as her term unfolded, allegations of corruption and irregularities started to surface. The promised clean government seemed to be more of a mirage, further eroding public trust. Lastly, Duterte pledged to promote peace and order. She promised a safer nation, where citizens could live without fear. But the reality painted a different picture. Crime rates remained high and public safety concerns persisted. The promise of peace and order was another echo in the wind. These unfulfilled promises started to tarnish her reputation and trust among the public. The image of a leader is not built on words alone, but on the actions that follow them. Unfortunately, for Duterte, her actions fell far short of her words, leaving a legacy of unfulfilled promises and a disillusioned public. A leader's worth is not measured by the promises they make, but by the promises they keep. And in this regard, Duterte's vice presidency is a lesson in unfulfilled potential. Sara Duterte's time in office was not without its share of controversies and scandals. Indeed, her vice presidency was often shrouded in allegations of corruption and abuse of power. One of the most notable scandals was the so-called ghost projects controversy. It was alleged that certain government projects, which were supposed to be overseen by her office, never materialized. Yet reports suggested that funds for these projects were dispersed. This raised eyebrows and led to a series of investigations, casting a long, dark shadow over her vice presidency. Then there was the conflict of interest issue. It was alleged that Duterte had ties to businesses that were awarded lucrative government contracts. The vice president's close relationship with these companies was seen as a violation of her duty to serve the public interest. It was a controversy that further tainted her image, and one that she could never quite shake off. Perhaps the most damning scandal was the abuse of power allegation. Many critics argued that Duterte used her position to influence and intimidate government officials and business leaders. These allegations were never fully proven in court, but the court of public opinion was less forgiving. The mere suggestion of such behavior was enough to damage her reputation. But the controversies did not stop there. There were also allegations of nepotism, with claims that Duterte favored family members and close associates for key government positions. This was seen as a betrayal of public trust and a stark contrast to her promise of a transparent and merit-based government. And let's not forget the media intimidation scandal. Duterte was accused of using her power to silence critics and control the media narrative. This raised serious concerns about freedom of speech and the role of the media in a democratic society. These scandals further eroded public trust in her leadership and raised questions about her suitability for the position. Despite her attempts to dismiss these controversies as political maneuvers, the damage to her reputation was significant. Each scandal chipped away at her credibility, making it increasingly difficult for the public to place their trust in her leadership. Public opinion and approval ratings can be a good indicator of a leader's effectiveness and popularity. Let's take a look at how these parameters have played out in the case of Vice President Sara Duterte. During the initial days of her vice presidency, Duterte enjoyed a relatively high approval rating. This was likely due to the fresh hopes and expectations that often accompany a new leadership. However, as time passed and promises remained unfulfilled, these numbers began to dwindle. Major drops in her popularity began to appear around the time when several of her controversies and scandals came to light. The public trust, once strong, began to falter. This was not a sudden fall from grace, rather a steady decline, mirroring the rising dissatisfaction with her leadership among the public. The approval ratings continued to dip as more and more Filipinos felt let down by her actions, or rather, inactions. The vice presidency, a position of immense power and responsibility, seemed to be in the hands of someone who was not living up to the expectations. One could argue that approval ratings are not the be-all and end-all of a leader's worth. True, they do not paint the full picture, but they do provide a glimpse into the public sentiment, into the hearts and minds of the people who are directly affected by the actions of those in power. In the case of Duterte, the low approval ratings were not just numbers on a scale. They were a reflection of the widespread disappointment and disillusionment among the people. They were a sign of the growing gap between the leader and the elite. Despite these low approval ratings, Sara Duterte remained in power, leading to widespread dissatisfaction and disillusionment among the public. It's a poignant reminder that leadership is not just about holding a position, but about living up to the trust and expectations vested in that position by the people. Looking back, it's clear that Sara Duterte's vice presidency was a period of unfulfilled promises and numerous controversies. As we reflect on the key points discussed in this video, it becomes apparent how each aspect contributes to the overall picture of a vice presidency marked by disappointment and scandal. Sara Duterte's early days in office were filled with potential, a chance for fresh leadership and positive change. Yet as time went on, the promise of a better future seemed to fade into the background, replaced by a series of unfulfilled pledges that left the public disheartened. The controversies and scandals that marked her term only added to the disillusionment. Each new revelation, each fresh allegation served to further erode public trust and confidence. These were not merely isolated incidents, but rather a pattern of behavior that called into question her integrity and fitness for office. Her approval ratings, perhaps the best barometer of public sentiment, reflected this downward trajectory. Despite brief periods of respite, the overall trend was one of declining popularity, a clear indication of public dissatisfaction with her performance. But perhaps what stands out most in this retrospective is not the specifics of each controversy or the exact number of unfulfilled promises. Rather, it's the broader narrative they contribute to. A tale of a vice presidency that, far from elevating the nation and its people, seemed instead to contribute to an atmosphere of cynicism and disillusionment. This is why the narrative of Sara Duterte's vice presidency is a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the importance of strong, ethical, and accountable leadership. It underscores the need for leaders who are not only willing to make promises, but also possess the determination and integrity to fulfill them. In the final analysis, the question of why Sara Duterte is considered the worst vice president in the history of Philippine politics is perhaps best answered by reflecting on the legacy she leaves behind. A legacy marked more by controversy and disappointment than by progress and achievement. Subscribe for more amazing content. Keep wondering. Don't miss out on future explorations and discoveries. Hit subscribe and ring the bell to stay updated with our new content. Your journey of wonder continues with every video. Stay connected and engaged on social media. Continue the conversation, follow us. Thank you for being a part of the Have You Ever Wondered community. Keep wondering, keep discovering. Until next time.